afternoon. Please say your full name and spell your last name.
Joshua B. Redeau, R-E-N-E-A-U.
And how are you doing?
I'm a detective / SRO for the Coeur Division.
How long have you been with the Portland Police?
About 7 years.
Any prior law enforcement experience?
No, sir.
How long in the role as detective?
About 5.5 years.
And how long as SRO?
The same amount of time, about 5.5 years.
And what certifications did you have to obtain to be in that role through my course?
So I have a post-basic certification that I attained. I had to do 21 weeks of coursework through the academy. I went to the Boise Police Department Academy in southern Idaho. Upon completion of that, I had to come up here and complete approximately 6 months of field training, and then I had a probationary period on top of that.
Successfully completed all of that?
Correct.
And just to clarify, your post stands for Police Officer Standards and Training?
That's correct.
And that is the entity charged with training and certifying peace officers in the state of Idaho?
That's correct.
Ma'am, are you Summer? Can you step out for just a moment?
And for your role as SRO, are you assigned to a specific school?
I am. I'm assigned to Portland High School.
And have you been assigned to Portland High School through the whole time you've been SRO, or you just get?
No, I've been moved around sometimes.
How long have you been in the role with Portland High School?
I started at Coeur d'Alene High in January of this year.
And so describe what you do in your role as the SRO for Portland High School.
There's a lot of functions that I complete as the SRO there. Number one is for safety and security for the school. Somebody comes in or if there's a safety issue, and there are two entities that handle it. We have campus security, but it's important to have an SRO on site and handle things correctly as far as law enforcement issues are related. I also handle juvenile casework, detective work for crimes that happen. I also handle caseload for registered sex offenders, the sex offender violations for the city. So I'm a detective that handles that caseload as well.
And so pursuant to that role, are you generally informed of where visitors want you to join the school, to join the school?
I am.
I want to direct your attention back to February 20th, 2025, when you went to that.
I was.
And during your shift, did you learn that the event would take place on the 22nd at school?
I did. Just about the time I was going to leave for the day, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was contacted in my office by a couple of staff members of the high school who informed me they just completed a walkthrough with a couple of people who were going to use the facility for town hall style events over the weekend.
Did you have any prior or any information about either the event or the walkthrough prior to that point? Is that something that you normally, just your experience as an SRO, you have that information or inform that prior to the walkthrough taking place?
Generally, if the event's going to take place outside of school hours, I may or may not hear about it ahead of time. If there's going to be a walkthrough during school hours, generally I'm advised that it's going to happen prior to the walkthrough happening.
And so when you learned of this walkthrough that had already taken place, that caused you concern?
It did cause me concern because so when I spoke with the two staff members that had gone through the walkthrough, they had advised that there was a gentleman representing. So they had advised that there was one of the members that had gone through the walkthrough with them that had questions regarding carrying firearms on school property. And that raised some concern.
Are there particular restrictions, significant restrictions on carrying firearms on school property based on training and experience?
There are. Generally, you can't carry firearms on school property. There are a few limitations to that, but that's just the general rule.
context of some proposing to provide security for an event that's getting held on school properties that are used by those carry firearms?
There are, if they're actually employed as a security officer, they can carry firearms. Generally, they like it to go through before the school board to let them know that that's gonna happen ahead of time. So the school board is aware that that's going to take place.
And so once you learned about that proposal, for this security entity, what then did you do?
I contacted I guess the owner of the company who was going to be security for the event and had a conversation with him.
Who is that person that you called?
Let's fall through that.
And describe, if you would, that first phone call with Mr. Trouette about security was going to take place for that.
So the first phone call that I had with Mr. Trouette, just basically centered around talking about Idaho Code 18-3302, which talks about limitations on concealed carry and carrying firearms on school property. Generally, the section that we deal with the most as a school resource officer with students potentially bringing firearms on the school property is the 18-3302 section B. And so we discussed that. I read that to him, and he brought up 18-3302C. And so we discussed that briefly.
Did you inform him about the actually employed or formally hired for purposes of providing security or have firearms on school property?
I did. The way I read that code, the 18-3302C, it states that they need to actually be employed, and so I had that conversation that he needed to be employed or hired by the group that was going to take over the school or use the schools in order for that to apply to him for that exception.
What kind of thing did you indicate at that time in terms of whether or not you could formally hire or actually employed by sponsor for that event?
He stated he had been hired by the case here.
Yes.
What's that?
Sorry, Paul, you said it was for the county, what was that?
Yes.
And did you ask or did you provide any proof of that at that time?
Not at that time, not during my first conversation.
Did you subsequently ask him for any proof of that?
I did on my second conversation with him. I asked him for the contract.
And so describe how that second conversation took place. When did that occur?
So the second conversation took place Friday morning, I think it was approximately 11 a.m. I called him, and after trying to verify whether or not he had actually been hired by the Coeur County Republican Central Committee as security, so that exception would apply for him if he could carry firearms. But I hadn't been able to find anybody, either with the school district or the KCRCC, that was able to say he had been hired. In fact, I'd spoken to one representative, and she informed me that she had heard that he was volunteering his time and that he had not technically been hired for private security.
And so that is at that point that you called again to discuss that issue.
Correct.
And during that second phone call, describe what you and Mr. Trouette discussed.
So I asked again for a contract showing that he had actually been hired to provide security. He stated that he did not actually have a contract, and then he kind of pivoted just a little bit and stated that he wasn't technically hired, but that he was going to provide security, basically volunteering or donating his time to provide security for the event.
And backing up a little bit, we check around to see if anybody, school district or KCRCC was aware of him being hired. Time. Do you remember who that was?
Nina Beasley. Had a conversation with her earlier that morning.
And so during that second conversation, Mr. Trouette confirmed that he did not have an executed contract for security services provided at that event.
That's correct.
And what did you tell him in response to that?
I told him without an executed contract, without anything showing that he'd actually been hired to provide security services, there wasn't any difference between that and having somebody just show up and decide that they were going to volunteer their time and just decide to carry a gun. So I needed to, in order for my interpretation of the law, he needed to actually technically be hired as the law states. He wasn't able to provide me with that, so I told him that I thought it would be in violation of 183302.
Did you have any of the phone calls with the defendant prior to the event taking place in February 2nd?
I did, I had a third phone call.
Describe what discussed with Chief Trouette during that call.
We discussed the same thing, basically a contract. He had told me that he had spoken to a Coeur County deputy who had told him that he could have back carried firearms, it wouldn't be a problem. We again went over what we talked about previous, that if there wasn't a contract executed, that in my opinion, as a law enforcement officer and also as a school resource officer there, I didn't believe that it was, I thought that he would be in violation of that statute. He then told me that he would have a contract drawn up in which he would be paid $1 for his services, so that he could technically be employed. Again, I told him that I didn't think that that would meet the code, as he wouldn't be paying his employees, that were gonna be representatives there as well, and who would also be earned. And so we kind of went back and forth on 183302, and at the end of that conversation, he basically agreed that he wouldn't have firearms during this time.
Did you identify the company that you were providing services through?
He did, it was your asset management.
Identify what his role with your asset management was?
The owner.
And during that third conversation, did he say kind of what his purpose, kind of the role of providing security services for the event on February 22nd was going to be?
He did. He said that his role was going to be mostly to prevent somebody from filibustering or monopolizing the time and to kind of keep disruptions to the event.
Do you recall that word filibuster, was that one that he specifically used?
I believe that's the word he used, yes.
And so just to clarify, again, that last call was there was understandings as far as you felt between the Mr. Trouette that he did not carry firearms, but still could provide security services to the client for firearms.
Yes. After our conversation, I told him I didn't know that I didn't know a criminal statute that he would be in violation of if he decided to provide security, as long as he was marked as security and they did not carry firearms. And when we finished our conversation, he agreed that they would not be bringing firearms on the premises.
All right, and so fast forwarding a bit to after the event took place, what took place at the event, were you contacted by anyone within the school the days that followed, not discovered in advance?
I was. I told him.
And if you could describe what she, informed she discovered.
She told me that Mr. Trouette had left a clipboard behind during the event itself, and that she had had custody of the clipboard, and she had returned the clipboard to him, and she had discovered that there had been a document on that clipboard of the operational plan that had been left behind.
She provided you with the document that she said she recovered?
She did.
And what did you do with that document?
I turned it over to Detective Haley.
Who she should approach this? Now, Detective Redeau Handy was marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 10. That document, and tell me if you recognize it.
I do. This is the document that I was provided.
And as far as you tell, that's true and accurate representation of the document you were provided.
Yes.
And that's a true and accurate representation of the document that provides Detective Haley.
It is.
Retrieve that document. It's not. Now, in your role as SRO for Coeur High School, are you partly familiar with policies and procedures of the school district with regard to visitors, security on campus, things of that nature?
I am.
And are you familiar with the process for removal of an unwanted person from a school property?
I am.
And based upon your experience and your understanding of district policies and procedures, how does that process occur in terms of removing someone from school property? That goes directly to, so place on, for 1 second, directly to West Hampton to the event, certainly part of the school property.
Should be outside the presence of the Ladies and gentlemen,